Good afternoon, and thank you for joining our 529-day celebration. My name is Elena Van Tassel, and I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Economic Empowerment and a Deputy Treasurer. I'll be moderating today's event. We have a full program ahead for you, and we're looking forward to today's conversation. Today's event will start by giving some background about our office before introducing the BabySteps Savings Plan. We'll then go through our most frequently asked questions, also known as FAQs, with two of MEFA's resident savings experts, Julie and Jonathan. But first, before we begin our program, we'll do a little housekeeping. This is a Zoom webinar and will be recorded and may be uploaded onto a website or Facebook for future use. Any questions asked through the Q&A function will be anonymous. However, the chat function is subject to public records law and is such not anonymous. Please be sure to complete the survey after our event so we can continue offering high quality programming like this. And now about OEE and Baby Steps. Today's event, BabySteps Savings Plan, is hosted by the Office of Economic Empowerment. Learn more about OEE by visiting our website, which you can find in the chat. We also put together a quick video for you to better understand the work we do, which we will play now.
Your financial well-being is our priority. The State Treasurer's Office of Economic Empowerment is here with free financial education to make your tomorrow even brighter. If you live in Massachusetts, you can access no-cost resources and online training, all designed with you in mind. Take it at your own pace or build community and learn with others. We offer help with budgeting, building credit, education and vocational training savings, financial wellness for families and communities, maximizing your money, planning for retirement, and more. Whoever you are, wherever you are in your financial journey, and whatever your money goals may be, we have the tools you need to succeed. Get started on your path toward a healthier financial future. Visit mass.gov/treasury/empowerment to learn more.
Great. Now let's dive in. Let's start by launching a poll for the audience. Oops, there we go. We're going to start by launching a poll for the audience. It's a great icebreaker. Who is here with us today? And while everybody is answering these questions, I'm going to introduce our panelists, Julie and Jonathan, and hear more from them. Julie, can you tell us more about what the BabySteps Savings Plan is and how MEFA is involved?
Sure. So the BabySteps Savings Plan is a savings plan for Massachusetts families, and any baby that's born in Massachusetts is eligible to receive $50 as a seed deposit into this savings plan, as long as it's opened within the first year of birth or adoption. So that's really great to get someone started on saving for college. What else can I tell you? We're going to get into 529 plans, which is what this account is and how they are flexible. They have tax advantages, and they are investment accounts specifically designed for families to save for higher education. And that includes community college, vocational training, again, very, very flexible.
Thanks, Julie. Sorry, I had to get off of mute. I apologize for the delay. Oh, and we have the results of our audience poll. So let's see who's here today. Many of you are considering opening up the account, a BabySteps account, but the majority, 50% of participants, are community organizations. That's great. We'll have more information about enrollment hubs later on, and there are some others as well too. So fantastic. We'll have another poll later on in the presentation. So Julie, I'm going to go back to you. Thank you for talking about BabySteps. You did talk about the account and the account owner. So who's the actual owner of the BabySteps account, and who's the beneficiary?
Yeah, so the owner of the account is usually the parent or another adult. And that's the person who opens the account and manages the account. And the beneficiary is the baby, who then eventually becomes the student that the money is intended for. So, and Elena, may I just say a word about MEFA too, and where I didn't say that in the intro, but just to mention that that the organization that I work for, MEFA, is a state-based authority, and we've been around since 1982. And our mission is to help families plan, save, and pay for college. And so it's so terrific that we have been partners with the Office of Economic Empowerment from the beginning of this program, and just, very much love to be involved with all of this. Great program.
Thank you, Julie. And OEE has really valued our tremendous partnership with MEFA. So Jonathan, don't worry, I haven't forgotten about you. I'm going to throw the next question over to you. We often, I know, Jonathan, you come to a lot of our enrollment events and help us talk to families. We often get the question, what's the difference between an individual and a custodial account? Can you describe the difference?
Sure. And that is a good question, because it's the first question that you have to answer when you're actually going through the application. So when I have people, outside of sitting in enrollment trainings and helping them go through the application, if I have somebody on the phone who wants to know what they need to do, I'm always careful to say, okay, when you get there, the first question you're going to see is, do you want to open an individual account or a custodial account? It's probably not going to, make sense to you. So this is the difference. In an individual account, the owner, as Julie said, whoever is designated as the owner of the account, whether that's a parent or a grandparent or somebody else, will remain in control of the account until the account is completely liquidated. So they'll always have control over the account, meaning they can direct money out of the account and sort of control the investments on the account. For a custodial account, at a certain point, the ownership of the account transfers over to the beneficiary. So usually this is when you're sort of rolling money into the fund. If you've got a uniform gift to minors or trust to minors account and you're transferring that in, that might be a custodial account. So if you want to be in control of the account as the owner, you would pick an individual account. And in fact, if you want the $50 seed money from BabySteps, you would need to be invested in an individual account. So that very first question that you see on the application, individual or custodial, if you want the BabySteps seed, you'd need to pick individual account.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. That's really helpful. And Julie, back to you. Do you need to be a U.S. citizen to open up an account?
So you don't need to be a U.S. citizen to be an owner of a U Fund account, but you do need to have either a social security number or a tax ID number.
Great. Thank you. And Jonathan, what if the family is having a hard time enrolling? They watch the webinar, they still want to enroll. What do you recommend?
Well, they can always call. They can call us at MEFA. They can call Fidelity. MEFA's information I know was put in the chat. Fidelity, if they're really having difficulty getting through the actual application, Fidelity is 800-544-2776. But there are also, as we see here on the screen, 7 enrollment hubs, I believe. Is it 6 or 7 enrollment hubs throughout the state? And so I know that OEE has done a lot of work identifying and bringing on organizations to serve as these enrollment hubs. And what that is these are places that are already offering community based support in their communities, and they are trained on BabySteps, and actually the app trained through moving people through the applications. So if the people are having difficulties, to actually go to one of these enrollment centers, get personalized help from somebody there to actually walk them through the application and set up their account.
Great. Thank you. And if anybody wants to see the full list of BabySteps enrollment hubs, the link is in the chat. And speaking of the chat, I'm just going to remind everybody, if you have questions, feel free to use the chat or the Q&A feature to ask any BabyStep questions that you might have. All right, Julie, back to you. We often get a lot of questions about beneficiaries and successor accounts, successor owners. What is a successor owner?
Yeah, so there's a question in the form that you complete to open one of these accounts. Would you like a successor owner? And that's really just a person that could take over the account if something happened to you as the owner. So the beneficiary, again, is the child, the student, but the successor owner would be someone that you would just designate, again, if somehow you weren't able to manage the account, that that person could manage it. Now, when you're first completing the application, if you don't know the successor owner, let's say you're going to designate it's your sister, but you don't have her telephone number there with you or the email, that's okay. You can open this account without that. But then you could always go back at a later point and just put a successor owner in there, just as a safeguard.
Great. Thank you, Julie. And Jonathan, you know, we're talking, these are baby steps. So a lot of times it's new parents opening the accounts, but does the owner have to be the parents?
No, and that's a good point, especially I thought of that when Julie was talking about owners needing social security numbers or tax ID numbers. You know, if the parent doesn't have one for whatever reason, you know, the parent does not have to be the owner of the account, right? So it can be a grandparent, it can be an aunt or an uncle, it can be a family friend. It doesn't have to be any specific relationship to the beneficiary in order to open this account. So the only thing you want to make sure that you think about when you designate who the owner is going to be, if it's not going to be the parent, is that the owner, once again, is in control of the account and is the only person who can direct funds. So you just want to make it somebody that you're completely comfortable with giving them the ability to do that.
Great, Jonathan, thank you. And just a quick follow-up question, since it doesn't have to be the parent, what if you don't have the social security number?
Of the child, yeah.
Yeah.
There's as everybody's had a child knows, there's a few weeks lag between the birth and getting the social security number. A social security number is one of the required fields, so that's something that you need in order to open a 529 account for a child, is their social security number. And while you can open up a 529 account in the beneficiaries, that is in the owner's name with the owner as the beneficiary as well, and transfer that ownership of that beneficiary to the child later on when they get their social security number. That's something that you can do. I think in terms of baby steps, it's probably best to just wait for that social security number, because what actually triggers baby steps eligibility is, the beneficiary. So the beneficiary is at the center of this whole thing. So if the beneficiary is eligible, meaning they live in Massachusetts and are under one, then they'll, go into the pipeline to receive their baby step seed. If you set it up in your name as the owner, then you don't meet that requirement. So it's probably best to wait until that social security number comes through.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan. And Julie, we're starting to get some questions from some webinar audience members. Can you still open up a 529 even if you missed the first birthday deadline?
Absolutely. So it's great to open it within that first birthday just to get that seed account money. That's great. But if you do miss that, you absolutely can open up a 529 at any time. And we have a mantra, I guess, that we say at MEFA: never too early, never too late, as far as saving for college. So absolutely, you can still go right into the Fidelity website, open a 529 and start saving, either, monthly or once in a while or whatever, and still receive that same huge benefit.
That's such a great point, Julie. I was going to say, we actually had a pilot program that was at the kindergarten level in Worcester, and we actually found a number of parents would enroll their kindergartners and then say, well, can you stay so I can enroll their older siblings, which was just so fantastic to see. So such a great message. Jonathan, we do have another question from the audience. But the beneficiary is the child. Is there an age where they would have control over the 529 account?
So to get back to my earlier point about individual versus custodial, it would depend on whether or not it was an individual account or a custodial account. For individual accounts, no. The owner who's set up as the owner is always going to be in control of the account. If you set it up a different way under a custodial type of agreement, then it would be spelled out within that at what age that the beneficiary would become the owner of the account. However, just to reiterate one more time, for baby steps specifically, you would need to pick an individual account where the owner is in control of the account the entire time.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan. And Julie, another question from the audience. Does a second parent adoption count as a reason to get the 529, the $50 seed deposit?
So I guess I want to make sure I get the question straight, but in other words, if there's an adoption, then yes, that parent has 1 year from the date of adoption to here in Massachusetts to be able to open a Baby Steps account and get the $50 seed. So I hope I am. Is that what the question was?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Julie. All right. And Jonathan, back to you. Another beneficiary question that we often get. Can you change the beneficiary of the account?
Yes. So if for whatever reason, this is one of the most common questions that we get, what happens if the child doesn't end up going to school or needing the money for one reason or another? One of the things that you can do is transfer that account over to another beneficiary within the family. And that can be brother, sister, cousin, even, parents. That's a fine thing to do. That's an option.
Great. Thank you. And Julie, this is a question we often get. What's an ABLE account? How is that different than a 529?
Yes. So an ABLE account is a different type of savings account, but it has similarities to the 529. And it also has some connections here. So I'll talk about those two. So an ABLE account is a savings account for someone with a disability who can open this account and save and receive tax benefits similar to a 529 plan. And another big benefit is this person can save up to $100,000 in an ABLE account and not lose public benefits, which is hugely different than other types of savings vehicles for that population. So really terrific account. And you can learn more about that at MEFA. But a connection here is that there's a new law that if someone opens a 529 account, let's say through this baby steps process, and at some point thinks that maybe this child won't go to college and maybe there won't be those type of expenses, but this child still has a lot of other expenses, you can transfer monies in a 529 account to an ABLE account easily, no penalty, directly over, without any consequences. And then in that ABLE account, have a larger number of qualified expenses that would qualify for those tax benefits and all. So it is connected to a 529 plan in those ways.
Great. Thank you, Julie. And Jonathan, now this is probably the most common question we've gotten. I've gotten it every time I've been to an enrollment event. If you don't know anything about investing, what option should you pick?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, yes, I mean, the 529 account is an investment vehicle, right? So when you're going through the application, one of the questions, like 2 or 3 of the questions actually you have to answer are investment questions and how do you want these funds invested? So we're always very careful to say at MEFA, we're not investment experts. We're not qualified or licensed to give any investment advice. I don't know anything about investing myself. I always say that I would never know how to advise anybody to begin with. I would be in the same boat. And we know too, from sitting with folks during the pilot programs and actually doing the application with them, it's at this point when they start to get investment questions that they go, I'm not sure what to do here. I'm not sure if this is right for me. I don't know which way to go. I will say that this is why Fidelity Investments becomes really important to us here. And that is they manage the investments, they manage the accounts, and they have representatives who are able to give investment advice. So they can talk to people who are not really sure about investing, get a feel for their comfort level or their goals and what they're trying to do, and invest them and guide them to investments. I will say that if for whatever reason you're not able to do that at the time when you're setting up your account, if at a certain point after you set up your account, you can go and talk to Fidelity. If you don't like the way you invested, you can change your investment after the fact. So it's not set in stone when you're opening your account that when you pick this investment strategy, you need to stick with it. That is something that you can do at any time with Fidelity after the fact.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. And Julie, we've got another question from the audience. This one, I think it's about both qualified expenses. What kinds of things can the 529 be used for? And what happens if my child doesn't go to college?
Yeah, that's great. That's another common question. So thank you. So you can use the qualified expenses are, tuition and fees, housing, food, any kind of required expenses that you need for college that are part of that, cost of attendance. So anything to do with the expenses for college are qualified. And then over the years, we've seen these accounts become even more flexible. So now sometimes people can use up to a limit, some on K through 12 expenses. And in fact, now they can pay $10,000 for a student's student loans and towards some apprenticeship programs. So really the qualified expenses we've seen increase over the years.
So Julie, you just touched upon something. I'm just going to follow up. So you mentioned apprenticeship programs, and we get this question a lot. So if a child chooses to go to vocation or technical school, the 529 can be used for that?
Yes. So as long as the school has a federal code, which many do, yes, that there's a wide range of accredited colleges, universities, programs of all types, including vocational programs, that would qualify you to use your 529 savings. And then I know you asked the second part of that question is, let's say, what if my child doesn't go to college? But again, that's why that second part of the question comes in, where college is many things, right? It's post-secondary education. It's what are you going to do after high school? So there are many choices. Many would qualify to use your 529. But if not, you can always change the beneficiary of the account to another sibling or other relative of the original beneficiary. You could even, as a parent, keep it yourself. But then if you have to take the money out and not use it for a qualified expense, then you would pay income taxes on the earnings and a 10% penalty on the earnings.
Thank you, Julie. And then I'm going to answer this question that just came in from a participant. I saw on mass.gov that funds can be used for anything regarding financial wellness, like buying a home, buying a car, etc. Is this still correct? So I think that this person is asking about a policy recommendation. I want to make it clear that it's still pending legislation. It's not a policy yet, called baby bonds. Treasurer Goldberg has filed legislation to create a baby bonds program here in Massachusetts. I don't want to go too far off the topic of baby steps, but that is a different program that we're in the process right now of pursuing legislation for in Massachusetts, which would have would have funds that could be used for asset building, like buying a home, starting a business. So I believe that's what the person is asking about. And maybe if somebody on the back end can maybe put a link about baby bonds in the chat, that might be helpful for that participant. All right, we're getting more questions from the audience. Jonathan, can there be more than one beneficiary?
No, there cannot be more than one beneficiary on a U fund. So there's one owner, one beneficiary, and possibly a successor owner. You can change beneficiaries, but there can only be one at a time.
Thank you. And then Julie, back to you. Can you please clarify if the child receives a disability, which account would be favorable, 529 or ABLE?
Yeah, so, you know, I had this conversation last night at an event. I don't want to tell you exactly which one. I think the key would be to learn a little more about both, and we're happy to work with you on that. So that you really think about all the benefits of each and which one might be better for your family. You know, I explained that if you get a baby steps account and have a 529, that's great because you can always transfer it to ABLE. So I would say that would be an easy thing to do. But then as far as, you know, which one you want to fund more and all of those things, learn a little bit more about ABLE and all of the benefits there, as well as the 529, and make a decision that's best for your family. Happy to work with you on that.
Great. Thank you, Julie. So Jonathan, we know that there's been, some fluctuation in the market recently. Is there any type of danger about the account holder losing money in the account?
Well, there's always a risk when you're investing in the market. So, and 529 is not any different. And this is, of course, as I said before, we're not market advisors in any sense. I do want to point out that there is an FDIC insured option that you can pick when you are choosing your investment strategy, which is, your principal up to $250,000 is going to be safeguarded. It's called the bank deposit portfolio, and it's something that you can pick. You can talk to Fidelity about it. So it safeguards your principal, and the trade-off, of course, of that is, it's a very conservative investment. So when the market is doing very well, it may not increase in value as much as some other investment strategies would. But that is a way that you can, if you are worried about that. And again, this is something that Fidelity can sort of feel out on when they're talking to you about your investments, and they can advise you accordingly. But there is that option as well.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. All right, Julie, let's switch gears. How do you recommend someone save money in the account? Somebody's opening it for the first time. They're not sure what to do. What would you recommend? What would you suggest?
Yeah, well, one of the reasons we love baby steps is the earlier the better, right? Because it just gives you more years for that money to grow. And as Jonathan was talking about, ups and downs in the market with investment accounts, just have a lot of time. That can be your friend when it comes to saving. So, so the earlier the better, number one. And secondly, if possible, if you can set it up so that automatically you are having money go in there every month, and you're not having to think about it, and every month making a decision about where you're going to put some extra money. We all know how that goes with our lives and many expenses. So we've found that if people are able to set up that automatic withdrawal, that they end up saving a little more. So that's the second thing I'd say. And I guess the third thing I'd say with that is, in speaking with families for many years, I know families always say to me, I know I should do this, I should open this, I've been thinking about it. And then they maybe beat themselves up a little that they're not saving enough. I think you just need to feel good. You make some decisions, you save what you can, and feel good about that. And then you'll continue to educate yourself about all the other ways people finance college. But feel good about whatever small or large amount you can save.
Can I add to that really quickly too? I'll say from my personal experience, and anybody who's heard me say anything about this knows the story, but I was saving for about 9 or 10 months at my son's 529 account right after he was born, before I even knew I was ever saving, because my wife set up a automatic withdrawal from my account, and I had no idea it was, because I never saw it. So just seconded there. And then the other thing I want to mention, because I don't think you mentioned it, I'm not sure if you did, I'm sorry, that you can involve like family and friends in the process as well, right? So there is, Fidelity gives you the option to set up a gifting page, and you can get a link to that page and just email that out to like family and friends. birthdays, communion, whatever it might be. And they can gift money directly in, and that's another thing too. But we always tell people that you don't have to take this all on by yourself. You can get other people involved too.
That's such a great point. Thank you, Jonathan. And Jonathan, I'm going to stick with you. All right, we hear the term compound interest. What can you tell a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, so I thought we were going here. So compound interest is essentially interest accruing upon interest. And it's one of the things that we talk about in our college savings presentation. And I think we have a slide and a poll question about this now, a couple of examples, just to do what Julie was talking about earlier and using time to your advantage. As I said, never too late, but early is better, right? So in this example, Julie here is going to save $50 per month in a 529 account when her child was first born. I'm going to wait till second grade and open up an account and try to make up for lost time and put in $100 every month. Who is going to have more money saved by the time their child turns 18? Is it going to be me, who started later and put more in, or Julie, who started earlier with less?
All right, we'll give everybody a chance to
Yes.
answer that question. And I know
My pins and needles waiting for the results.
I know. It's always my favorite question. It's
yeah, I know. It's let's see, who do we think it's gonna be? Ooh, you're incorrect. It's gonna be Julie. Julie is gonna have more money than me, and actually less of her principal is going to be part. So if Julie saves $50 per month when her child was first born, she's going to have $21,536. I'm not too far behind, but still $19,798. But if you look at, it's not just what you put in, it's the interest that accrues on that, right? So she put in $10,800 and gained almost that exact amount in interest over this time, whereas I put in $13,200 and earned a lot less interest, about $6,600, just shy of it. And just, if you're wondering, that asterisk there says that it assumes consistent monthly saving until the child is 18 and an annual investment return of 7%, which is supplied to us by Fidelity. So, in reality, markets go up and down, as we know, but they've said that this is a good bet for as far as the numbers.
great. Jonathan, thank you. That's really eye-opening. I think it really ties back to what both of you have said about, starting early, and even if you do small amounts, and just, how direct deposit can really help you. So
that's what I'm banking on. All that stuff for me, for my son. Yeah.
So Julie, I'm going to circle back to you. I think you touched a little bit about this, but what are the penalties for taking money out for things other than the qualified educational expenses?
Yeah, that's right. So again, we said those qualified educational expenses are wide, but let's say your roof caves in or something, you have to take this money out and it's not used for a qualified expense. Then what happens is when you complete your taxes, you will have to pay taxes on any earnings that have occurred on the account. So that's one thing. And the second thing is there will also be a 10% penalty on the earnings. So all of this is just on the earnings. So you kind of give up those tax benefits if you use this money on something other than qualified expenses. There are 3 exceptions to that, though. And they are, if the student passes away, of course, or the student has a disability, those penalties can be waived. But the third is also scholarship. So let's say it comes time to paying for college and your student gets a scholarship of $10,000 one year. You can still take $10,000 out of the 529 and not have those penalties because it was from receiving a scholarship and you have the extra money. So those are 3 ways that you can avoid penalties.
Great, thank you, Julie. And then Jonathan, this is another question we get all the time. What is the impact of baby steps in college savings on financial aid?
Yes, thank you. So I would say that it depends, first of all, on who the owner of the account is. But it doesn't depend all that much. So what I'll say about that is, when you're going to college, when your child or your student is going to go to college and you're filling out your financial aid forms, they're going to look at the family finances, and the general categories that they look at are things like student income, student assets, parent income, and parent assets. So in the count, they'll take all that information and they'll put it through a formula and determine what your financial aid eligibility is. Assuming that the parent is the owner of the BabySteps account, this would go as a parent asset. But parent assets are assessed very lightly in terms of the formula. So the vast majority of the weight of this in this formula is based on parent income and not parent assets. So it'll take anywhere from about 3 to 5.5% of total parent assets into account as to what you can afford to pay for college. So, 3 to 5.5%. If you've got $10,000, that's gonna, mean they're gonna expect you to pay about $550 of that towards college. So might it affect your financial aid? It might a little bit. It might not at all, but to the extent that it does, it won't be anywhere near to the extent that it comes to sort of jeopardizing that benefit of having this money saved. They might ask you to pay a little bit more, but you'll have a lot more to pay. And then if the owner is somebody other than the parent, it probably won't be assessed as an asset at all. So it has very, very minimal financial aid impact if it does have one.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. And then another question we often get, Julie, is what is the impact on public benefits? How does the 529 account impact public benefits? And I think we do have a slide on this.
Yeah, that's great. I was hoping we could share, it's generally very favorable. So for many public benefits, the 529 does not affect your benefits at all. But there are a few that have some very specific, minimums and maximums. So I would say this chart is an important one to look at if you have public benefits. And will we be sharing the slides with folks, or?
We can certainly share the slides, whether it's maybe in the chat, you can note how we're going to share them. Great. Yeah, they'll note in the chat, Julie, how they're being shared.
Great. So yeah, so you can see all of those lines where, public housing, low income home energy assistance, many are not affected at all, but you might just want to look for Mass Health and Medicare, look at those details a little bit to make sure if you have the public benefit, and check in with your service organization as well.
Great. Thank you, Julie. And Jonathan, another question we get all the time. We know BabySteps is a program for Massachusetts babies. But what happens if you decide to leave Massachusetts?
If you decide to leave Massachusetts, you still keep your BabySteps account or your U-Fund account, whatever it might be, however you think of it. That's going to go with you. That's going to be your account. Using the account, as Julie said, just because you're in Massachusetts 529 doesn't mean you have to use it for college in Massachusetts. It can be used for accredited colleges all over the country. In fact, even international colleges, as long as they have that federal code that Julie talked about. I would check. The only thing I can think of that might be a complication is your state may have different tax laws regarding certain 529 aspects than Massachusetts does. So, but as far as your account is concerned, nothing.
Okay. I don't see any more questions from the audience. Julie, Jonathan, thank you for answering all these questions. Do you have any other remaining words of wisdom for our audience today?
Well, I guess I will just share that my youngest daughter just graduated from college, and Jonathan and I talk about this all the time. And college is expensive, and I'm just very glad that I saved. Obviously, I'm in this work, so I know about it. But I did not save the whole amount. So I definitely did all of the other things, like applying for financial aid, and, you know, she had a work study job, and we pieced it all together. But having a certain level of savings was just very helpful in piecing together the financing. And truly, I don't know how I would have done it if I hadn't saved some money. So I just recommend it as a real necessity, no matter how little or big.
I'll also say too that my son is only 9, so we'll see how it goes with him. But it's easy to get overwhelmed by the cost of college, especially when it's so well sort of publicized and they give you these sort of big dollar amounts. It happens every August, every September that, when tuitions are set, that it now costs X amount of dollars to go to this particular college. People should realize that is not necessarily the cost of college. That is tuition and room and board, or food and housing. And, at one particular college, probably the most expensive in the area. There's lots of different types of colleges, lots of different costs. And then also, almost no families are going to pay that full price. That is what's called the sticker price. That's before financial aid. Financial aid is available to, and the vast majority of families will qualify for some level of financial aid. So that's not necessarily the amount that you have to save for. That's not the amount that you're going to be charged. And even if you can't, if you say, oh, I can never pay that full amount, you're probably not going to be asked to pay that full amount. It's worth it to have savings to pay the remaining balance after aid. Even if you can't pay the entire balance after aid, it's really key to reduce borrowing.
Great.
And that's what I would say.
Thank you, Jonathan. We actually did just get another question from the audience, and you touched on this earlier, so I'm going to stay with you. If somebody other than a parent opens the account, like a grandparent, would it show up as an asset for the student as a recipient? And I think this person's asking in terms of financial aid.
In terms of financial aid, yeah, no, in terms of financial aid as it is now, this is not a beneficiary's asset. It's not a student's asset. If somebody other than the parent were the owner of the account, it would not get looked at as a parent asset or as a student asset federally. It's hard to answer financial aid questions without getting sucked into the sort of quicksand of detail. But so when I'm answering that question, I'm talking about the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. And actually, I don't think it's going to be looked at regardless. I don't know, other colleges aren't going to, the colleges that may want other information, they're not going to ask from other relatives. So no, it wouldn't be listed as a beneficiary's asset.
Great. Jonathan, thank you. I don't have any other questions, and we have no additional questions I see from the audience. But if people do have questions, they leave, oh, I wish I asked this. How can people get a hold of you, Julie and Jonathan?
Yeah, I think the best place, email, maybe we can put this into the chat, is collegeplanning@mefa.org is a great email. We have a number of us who will happily talk through things with you and answer your questions. And John, what's the phone number?
800-449-MEFA.
That's great. That's great. And then I know there's also a BabySteps email as well too. That's both all the our social handles as well as our BabySteps emails on the screen as well. So it's also being put into the chat. And with a reminder, everybody, all our videos do get put up onto YouTube. That will happen shortly, and as well as we'll be emailing you out a link as well too. So if you want to go back and see any slides, we'll definitely have that. But the BabySteps email is also in the chat in case you tomorrow just realize, oh, I wish I asked this question. So Julie and Jonathan, as always, thank you so much for joining us to celebrate 529 Day and sharing your expertise on college savings. We very much appreciate it. We value your partnership, and we thank you again for, again, your time and your expertise today. And thank you all for joining us here today to learn more about Baby Steps. Please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions about Baby Steps, about MEFA or any of our other initiatives. So I hope everybody has a great rest of your day, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.